And so in this masterclass, what we're going to do is we're going to explain how we're going to help you build your presence across the right platforms, and how you can basically successfully engage your target audience. So our service guides you to sort of create and grow that personal brand and leaves a lasting impression, and hopefully will open the right doors as well. So let's start by talking about personal branding, and what, why, and who should actually embark on personal branding. So in terms of what is a personal brand, so, you sort of think about celebrities and you think about, people who are, a little bit famous, and that is not necessarily what, is associated with a personal brand. And, a lot of people, when we were talking about this, have said, oh, well, I'm not a public speaker. I'm not this, I'm not that. Public speaking also does not necessarily make you a personal brand, right? So great personal branding will differentiate you from your competitors and allow you to build trust with prospective clients. So personal branding can really be used to amplify you and position you in a successful manner. So a personal brand is the unique combination of your skills, your experiences, and also the way that you want to be presented to the world, right? I think it's important that we, sort of think about, what do people actually see when they see me, right? Who do they think I am? Those are questions that you should really ask yourself when you're talking and thinking about your personal brand. So why should you do it, right? So you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So make one that will set you apart and reflect who you are. A lot of the time when we meet people, or even before we meet people. So I had a meeting earlier this week on Zoom, and it was, someone had introduced me to someone, and then, the person said, let's have a Zoom call and, sort of discuss, what the reason why they introduced us. So I said, yeah, sure, let's do that, and when I got on the call, the first thing he said, oh, I've Googled you, so I know everything that everybody else knows, but, what are the other things that you can, what are the other things that you can do? Okay, one second. I think Ijeoma is here. Let me just quickly find her and unmute her. Ijeoma, can you hear us?
Yes, finally. Thank
okay.
you, Nkemdilim.
Okay, so we've gone a little bit, so we just sort of dived right in, and we're sort of now talking about why, people should really embark on their personal branding journey. And I was just talking about, having a meeting and someone basically saying, I Googled you and I know everything that the internet knows about you, right? And that could be something that is negative. That could be something that is positive. So I have a friend, who works in professional services, and, he's very, very private. So he doesn't really like to be out there. But, he says the problem now is that when you Google him, all you find online is pictures from his big socialite wedding that he had, because he comes from a big Lagos family. He married into a big Lagos family. So, that is also not the right image and the image that he wants to have out there. And he's currently trying to raise investment. So people are Googling him and they're basically finding just wedding pictures. And they're like, okay, well, but who are you, right? So it's really, really important that you own that, and that you really control the narrative and align your brand with your overall goals. So if you're trying to position yourself to raise funding for your business, or you're positioning yourself to sit on a board, or you're positioning yourself to, to get a promotion and get that next job, or change jobs, or you're trying to transition from being in corporate to becoming an entrepreneur. Those are all things that, you know, those are all goals, and you have to make sure that your brand actually aligns with those goals, right? And then you have to position yourself for bigger and better opportunities, obviously. So these are, I think, 3 key reasons why you should, you know, basically take control of your personal brand. So who should build a personal brand? So as I mentioned, there are many reasons why you should do it. And the foundation should always be substance. I had a live a couple of days back, and, you know, we talked about packaging and how a lot of people package themselves without actually having substance. So for us, it's really important that the people we work with actually have that substance and have the knowledge to back up the brand and the experience as well. So personal branding is suitable for entrepreneurs, for career professionals, and for people in transition. So what is that? Those are people who are professionals that are transitioning into entrepreneurship, C-level executives, you know, sort of transitioning into the next position or the next level up, and entrepreneurs that are looking to position themselves as board members or in some kind of advisory position, whether it is, you know, to sort of go into politics or government or policy making. So there are many, many reasons why you would want to sort of own the narrative and build that personal brand and really position yourself properly. So we've put together some frequently asked questions. So some of these are from our live, and some of them are from, you know, people just engaging with us over the last couple of days. And really talking about, you know, personal branding. So we're gonna do this in a little bit of a conversational style. So Ijeoma, the question is, do you have to put yourself out there, or can you rely on letting your work speak for itself?
So with regards to this question, I know that a lot of people, especially people who are actually doing the work, they focus on the work with the hope that, you know, if they do the work and continue doing the work, they will get visibility, right? But what usually happens is, especially in this age where some people are going online and sort of crafting their narrative and building their personal brands online, whether they even have the credentials to back it up or not. What then happens is those ones who sort of have a well-crafted story, a well-crafted narrative, who've put together their personal brand in a good way, they're the ones who get visibility. So at the end of the day, it boils down to visibility. Who knows you're actually doing the work? Is it just the people in your team and your boss? Who knows you're actually doing the work? So I think it's important that whatever you're doing, you need to get visibility for what you're doing. So meaning joining networks, putting it up on your LinkedIn. If it's something that is worth featuring in the newspapers, feature it in the newspapers, because people go for who they know. And sometimes when searching for positions, not a lot of research is done. I think I shared an example in the live about how we got contacted by CNN for a feature. And I was like, oh, why did we get contacted for CNN for this feature? Thinking it came from some recommendation by a client or something. At the end of the day, they said, oh, they went on Bella Ninja, they saw an event we did for a client, and under PR, they saw Redrick there. And that was it. And they contacted us because we were visible. So I think visibility is key. So if you're doing whatever you're doing, let people know what you're doing, give it visibility, give it ample visibility, so that opportunities will come and you won't be looked over for somebody else who does not really have the substance, but they're more visible than you are.
Okay, perfect.
So Nkemdi, because I know you're an introvert, so what should introverts do who really don't feel comfortable self-promoting, speaking in public, or posting on social media? So how can they build their personal brand? Are they like practical tips that they can sort of apply?
Okay, so the first thing I would say is that they need to live in the zone that's between fear and terror, right? Do what scares you, but not that it scares you so much that you want to, you know, drop dead. So I think that zone is really the zone where change happens and where you learn how to, you know, create almost like a persona, right? So I'm an introvert at heart. And when I do public speaking engagements, I enjoy it and I love it, but they also exhaust me. So by the time I leave, I am completely drained and I don't want to see people anymore. I want to crawl under a rock and, you know, just be by myself. But what I've realized is that the message that I have and that I'm sharing is actually an important message. So I keep doing it, right? And once you actually get over that initial fear, it becomes easier. And I think there are also ways of sort of self-promoting, you know, that are not maybe so obvious. I think you can share knowledge through articles. You can, you know, do podcasts. You can, you know, sort of do things that where you can hide behind the content, and you don't necessarily have to, you know, be that, you know, be out there like that, but you still get visibility because of the content that you're creating. But the truth is, at some point, somebody will drag you out of this shell, and will put you on, you know, especially if the content is really good that you're creating, will promote that content on your behalf, whether you like it or not. You know, and I think that it's actually really important that people do that, because, you know, for me, the people who are my greatest fans and cheerleaders are friends, and they are, you know, some of my clients as well, and some people who don't even know me, right? But they just have identified substance, and because of that, they promote me. So they put me into opportunities that I don't, you know, like I wouldn't get myself. And once those opportunities come, it's for me to either jump on them and know that they are stepping stones to the next level, or to let them go, right? And know that I'm giving that up. So I think it is really, you know, when you're an introvert, it is first of all doing work on yourself. And then secondly, also understanding what the bigger goal is, right? And being able to say, okay, I'm doing this for that bigger goal. I'm doing this in order to position myself for specific things. And as I said, there are a lot of ways that you can get visibility without necessarily having to put yourself out there, but you can put your work out there, which is also really important. But over time, if you're really interested in building a personal brand, people want to connect with you, right? The same way that when corporates and companies build their brands, they want to connect with the brand, right? They want to be part of that community, that company. They want to know the culture. So if you're not really ready to unveil at least part of yourself, then, you know, it will be really, really hard for you to do. So the first is probably an internal battle. And then once you're ready, just, you know, take it one step at a time. And, you know, maybe don't take on too much, don't do too much, but step out of that comfort zone so that you do get to the next level. Because I think that place between fear and terror is really where transformation happens for a lot of people. So Ijeoma, can you do this at any age, or is there a point where it's too late? What do you think?
I don't think it's too late to do anything. You know, I think one of the books I read that really inspired me was of Mary Kay Ashley, right? This woman had lived her whole life, retired, was in retirement, and decided to start a makeup business. So it's never too late to do anything. So I would say that just go for it, especially because sometimes you've had a career, maybe you're transitioning into something else, you're becoming something else, you're taking on a different role. So just do it. It's never too late at all. That's what I'll say. Just go ahead and do it. It's never too late.
Okay.
So in Nkemdilim, what if the opportunities pay the bills, although they potentially can dilute your brand?
Okay.
This is tricky.
So, yeah, it is a tricky one. And, you know, I think even in business, you often get faced with those opportunities that, you know, this is not really what you should be doing or what you want to be doing. But you then also feel like, oh, but the money is so good, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that temptation will always be there, right? And I think we have to be really, really careful with that temptation. And I was speaking to someone, this was actually a conversation about investment, you know, and she was saying that, you know, sometimes when you take you give away, let's say 10% of equity for, let's say $10,000, right? It means that you're taking a snack and you're canceling your main course, right? And it basically, what that means, you've given away way too much equity for the money that you've taken on. And by doing that, you've actually stopped opportunities for future investment, right? So you're never going to go past that stage where the person has given you $10,000 for the 10%. So it's the same thing with your personal brand. When opportunities come that do not align with your goals and that will sort of dilute your brand because they take you away from, you know, who you really are, and what and the message that you're trying to portray. So one thing that it does, it creates brand confusion, right? So imagine suddenly Nkem was, you know, I don't know, the cover girl of a makeup line. You know, people would just be like, okay, this is really strange. You know, she's usually in IT, usually talking about policy and digital transformation and, you know, how to position yourself. And now she's there saying, hey, this makeup is really great and you should use it. You know, people would be very confused about where the tie-in is, right? So you have to really, really be careful that you know, don't take opportunities that can dilute your brand, right? And the more you say no to things that are distractions and things that are not in line with your goals, the more the opportunities that you really seek actually start coming, right? And when we had our live, Ijeoma gave a really good example. You know, she said that she was working with really small businesses, and, you know, she then realized that that wasn't really the direction that she wanted to go as an agency, and she wanted to work with bigger brands. She wanted to work with global brands. And she then started saying no to the smaller brands and was patient and waited and positioned herself and pitched for jobs that were for bigger brands. And she started getting them. And now, you know, those are basically the new normal. Those are the jobs that she's getting, and people are now approaching her because they have seen the work that she's done with, you know, some of the bigger brands. And, you know, if she had continued, if she in between, you know, sort of took a job with a smaller brand, number one, what that does is that it takes resources off the table, right? So you're now putting in effort into something that probably, you know, isn't going to amplify you the way you want. And secondly, is taking your time, right? So you don't have that time to actually focus on the thing that you really want. In the time that you're working on that smaller brand, you could have, you know, probably written 5 proposals to pitch to bigger brands, or gone to 5 meetings, or, you know, gone to 5 networking events. So, you know, my advice would be very strict, and be okay with saying no. Saying no is actually a very powerful thing to do, because when you say no to something, you're saying yes to yourself. So I think that that's really, really important. So Ijeoma, how do you go about personal branding when you want to keep your company separate from yourself?
So a company and an individual can be 2 separate entities. They don't have to be integrated. For certain personal brands, it's important to integrate your company brand, especially if what your company is doing is linked to your brand. So for example, right, I own a PR company, right? And I'm positioning myself as a communications and a PR expert. So in that way, my company and my brands are sort of linked, right? So it's good because in a way, my company gives my brand credibility. But for example, if I wanted to position myself as I do something else, so maybe I'm interested in policy, and I also have a master's degree in policy making, you know, in regards to tech. So I moonlight as Nkemdi at some point, in my journey, right? But I'm also in communications, but I want to sort of keep, and I have a PR agency, but I want to keep that separate. It's very, very possible. I think the most important thing is to find out one is the company I own. Is it amplifying my personal brand, or is it diluting my personal brand? If it will amplify your personal brand, then it's important to sort of integrate it. But if it's diluting the personal brand that you want to build, then you can separate it. And how do you do this? So for example, nobody in your LinkedIn profile, you do not mention that you are the founder of that company. in your Facebook profile or in your Instagram profile, you do not mention that you're a member of that company. In interviews, you tailor your interviews and your speaking engagements and basically your platforms and your areas of visibility to focus on the area of your personal brand that you want to build, and you keep the business aside. So it's very, very possible. It just has to be done strategically. You can, so for example, and what usually happens is maybe you've built your personal brand to a certain level and maybe you have 10K followers, right? And now you want to promote an aspect of your business. You now say, oh, let me promote this aspect of my business on this bigger platform that I've built because it has more followers. No, you cannot do that, right? You have to keep both entities completely separate, even if one platform is more powerful than the other. So by choosing to say, okay, I want to separate them, you have to choose to also really separate them, even if one platform is bigger than the other. And there are certain situations that may come about that you want to sort of leverage off that platform. No, do not leverage off that platform. So I think, first of all, two things. Ask yourself, is my personal brand and my company, are they sort of integrated or separated? If they're separated, then separate them completely and build them, let them be their own entity.
Okay, so in the chat, there's sort of a follow-up question to this, right? And the question is it wrong for the founder of a company to be really close to his or her brand and to potentially be the face of his or her brand?
I think it's not wrong. It depends on, I think, so for example, before Nkemdilim and I decided to come on board and have this sort of personal branded service, collaborate on this, we used to, as a PR company, we used to offer CEO profiling. So, but it also it depends on the strategy, the overall communication strategy of the company, of the brand. So, for example, I was having a conversation, I think 2 days ago. It's a fitness brand, right? And with fitness, it's a fitness, wellness, weight loss brand. With what you see with brands like this is that personal touch is very necessary. People want you to be a testimony of what you're talking. You have to sort of live it, right? I can't be telling you, oh, lose 10 pounds or this is how you can lose 5 pounds or 15 pounds. And here I am struggling to lose 5 pounds. I have to show that I have sort of conquered this journey, right? So for a brand like that personal brand, that CEO being the face of the brand is very, very important, right? Is very, very important. But then again, there are certain brands and companies that might not necessarily be important. So for example, if you own an oil and gas firm, nobody necessarily needs to know who the CEO is, right? Nobody necessarily needs to know who the CEO is. You can just put the brand at the front and center, have a spokesperson, nominate nominate certain key people within the executive management team that can sort of speak and represent the company. So I think at the end of the day, each business is different and each business requires different things. So I can't tell you, oh, yes or no. It depends on the type of business, right? And the structure of your communication strategy. That would determine if the CEO needs to be at the front and center of the brand, or if the CEO can take a back seat and let other members of the team sort of speak for the company. So it really depends on the company. It's not a one-size-fits-all strategy or answer.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think it also depends on where the company is on their journey. So let's say you're leading a company that hasn't been doing well, and you're the new CEO. You've come on board with maybe a new executive team. In that instance, you do have to sort of lead that company and profile yourself and position yourself in a way to say, I am here and I am leading this company out of this, bad situation where the company is in, and this is why I was selected for this role, right? To really play on your competence and your experience, right? So that you can regain the trust of shareholders or the trust of clients or potential consumers, right? So I think that it, as Ijeoma said, it really is dependent on what type of company it is, right? What you will see is that the bigger the companies get, the you know, sometimes the CEOs then are a little bit more detached from, you know, the brand, because, you know, the company is already an institution. But when you have smaller companies, a lot of the time, you know, you see that the CEO is really, you know, is the company. But you have to also be careful with that, because when the CEO is the company, it also means that you are building everything around yourself. So you have a massive key man risk. And that also means that you basically, you know, if you want to then hand over to a team member, it becomes hard, because your clients will be like, no, 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 it's only Nkem that we want, or only Ijeoma that we want, you know. So I think you need to, in all of that, as you're building your brand and tying yourself to your company, right, if that's what you're doing and becoming the face of the company, make sure that you're building faces of the company by amplifying your team, and by positioning your team members as well, right? And this has to be done in a really strategic manner, so that people actually understand that, you know, it is not just Nkem in this company, right? There's John and there's Miracle, and there, you know, other people who are really strong and who are experts in what they do. And when Nkem says, you know what, John is going to handle this, then we are in good hands, right? So I think it's really, really important to make sure that you're not the only pillar of that brand and the only thing that is associated with that brand. But, you know, absolutely, you can tie yourself to a brand. It's not something that is seen as negative. But I think it's just that there are a couple of things that you have to sort of be a little bit careful about.
I think we have one last question. How long does it take to build your brand, and how do you know if your brand is heading in the right direction?
Okay, so I think that there's not really any type of, you know, sort of specific timeline where, you know, you can say, oh yeah, it takes exactly, I don't know, 3 months to build your brand, or exactly 3 years to build your brand. I think everybody has a sort of a different journey. And I also think that it depends on the point where you start building your brand and how deliberate and intentional you are about building your brand. So as I mentioned, you know, I've sort of started building my brand 15 odd years ago, and I was not intentional about it at all. There was no such thing as personal branding back then, right? At least not the way that it exists today. And the person who really pushed me was my dad. You know, he was like, we need to build your profile. You know, you need to have a track record. You need to be able to show that, you know, you know what you're doing, and, you know, you are speaking at different things, and you're, you know, presenting different things, and you're working on different projects. So you need to amplify that. And, you know, like I would get speaking engagements, and at the time they were really small ones, but you know, my dad would be like, okay, tell me, what are the key points that you said? And what is, you know, what is the title of this conference that you went to? And I'm like, Dad, it's like some small developer meetup. He's like, who cares? And he would basically put that in the newspaper, you know, and, you know, really celebrate that. And, you know, if I won an award or got some type of recognition, he would put that in the newspaper as well, because he knew all the IT journalists, because he's in tech as well. So I was lucky to sort of have like a PR machine behind me without really wanting that. You know, so I would always roll my eyes and be like, oh God, you know, wow, you have come again, you know. And, you know, when my friends call me and be like, oh, I saw you in the newspaper, I would, you know, really be kind of shy, because I would be like, oh my God, I'm cringing right now, because this guy has, you know, this man has done it again. But in hindsight, you know, I am so grateful that he actually, you know, sort of took it upon himself to help me build my brand, because at some point it started paying off, right? And, you know, then I started realizing the benefits of it, right? And by realizing the benefits of it, I started becoming more intentional, right, with my messaging. I started becoming more consistent with my messaging, right? And there was a friend of mine that I spoke to, and, you know, she said, you're doing something different. She said, what you're saying is the same all the time. And I said, yeah, I'm just being a little bit more deliberate with my messaging. And, you know, she said, no, it's really good, because you're now positioning yourself as an expert in this particular area. and that will help your company, that will help you, and you'll see that the speaking engagements that you will get will be more focused on that, right? I also then started saying, what are the things that I really don't want to do? What are my non-negotiables? And what are the things that I want to focus on, right? So one of those things that I started saying no to was speaking on women in tech panels, right? And the reason why I started saying no to women in tech panels was because I felt like they were very whiny and they kept talking about the challenges and difficulties of being a woman in tech, and I really didn't have anything to contribute to that discussion. However, I did have stuff to contribute to discussions that were around technology for development, or how to use technology in education, or how to use technology and digital to position brands, or digital transformation. So I started saying no to that narrative because I didn't want to be part of that narrative. I wanted a seat at the table. I want to talk what the boys are talking about. They're not sitting around talking about how it feels to be a man in technology, right? So for me, I felt like if I want to be in a position where I am respected the same way that the men are respected, then I need to stop having that, that narrative. And that is a decision that I made for myself. It may not be something that will work for everybody, but it is something that I have been very consistent with. Does that mean that I don't support any women in technology initiatives? Not at all. I support all of the people that I know that have women in technology initiatives. And how do I do that? I go and give career talks to young girls. I spend time with young developers who are female, and sort of try and knock the imposter syndrome out of their head. So there are many ways that you can reach a specific target audience and still talk about a subject without it necessarily being, like public, the way that, being on a panel talking about a specific challenge would be, right? For me, it's more the aspect of, let me solve this problem, right? Let's get more women into tech. Let's get more women to stay in tech. Let's get more women to be confident in tech. I don't need to go and talk about that. I just need to do the work, right? And I need to build myself up to be a role model for them. So, that change and that decision has helped me to position myself in a very, very different way, right? And the invitations for women in tech panels have also stopped, right? Because they know that I will say no. And that I will say I would rather speak on something else. So how do you know that your brand is heading in the right direction? So I think when bigger opportunities come, that is when you start really knowing that you are going in the right direction. When people start noticing what you are doing, then you also know that you're sort of going in the right direction. Okay, I think there are a couple of more questions. So there's one from Remy that says, how can you build a brand on a U-turn journey? I mean, if the career you want to build your brand upon is not where you started.
Okay, so let me sort of talk. So for example, I started out as a fashion journalist, right? I used to write for Bella Ninja, and I was the editor at large of Bella Ninja Style. And I started working at BN when I was 18. I did it all. I worked at BN all through university. Knew I wanted to study communications, so study communications. When I came back and I set up my PR company, at first when I started as fashion PR, right? Because I was working as a fashion journalist. I had a lot of fashion contacts, and then I studied communications and PR. So it just made sense to do fashion PR. But somewhere along that journey, I decided that I wanted to work with brands. I wanted to work with FMCGs. I wanted to work with corporate brands. I wanted to work with L'Oreal. So somewhere along that journey, I realized I don't really want to work with fashion brands anymore. So in that way, I kind of had to sort of rebrand and reinvent myself in a certain way. So how did I do that? For example, one of the first things I did was I stopped taking fashion clients as a business. When I started doing PR, I stopped taking fashion clients. I put it out there that, I wanted to take, I was looking for, I wanted to work with lifestyle brands. I wanted to work with brands other than fashion brands. And by putting it out there, I got invited to more pitches that were outside of fashion. When people were calling me to do interviews about, oh, my career in fashion, I declined those interviews. I said I didn't want to talk about fashion. I wanted to talk about my career. I wanted to talk about fashion as a starting point, but not as where I am. So I declined interviews that tried to put me in that fashion box, right? Or in that fashion editor, that fashion journalism box. I declined being even seen in certain places so that I do not land in this day style and they think I'm still a fashion editor or a fashion influencer. So like by taking those sort of like strategic steps, although like my journey and the first half of my sort of career experience was in fashion, I wanted to move, and I took certain strategic steps. So what I would say is, where do you want to be, right? And what are those steps that can get you to where you want to be? And what are you doing in terms of positioning, in terms of what are you talking about, in terms of platforms you're engaging with? Are they in line with where you're headed? Or are they still in line with where you are? So you slowly and strategically have to move away from where you are. So for example, you set up a Medium blog. I don't know what direction you're heading to now, but you set up a blog talking about the things you want to start talking about now, right? You set up in your Facebook page or in your Instagram page, what you're interacting with, what you're engaging with. It should focus on where you want to be. So it's about like shifting the narrative, literally shifting the narrative, shifting the conversation from one point to another point, but strategically, and being picky and choosy. So saying no to certain things and moving on from certain things, even though that is sort of your comfort zone and your comfortable place, but moving. Now nobody would ever call me. I remember somebody called me the other day and said, why did you even stop taking fashion clients? I said, because I didn't want to play in that field anymore. So I even stopped writing for Bella Ninja after so many years. I was sort of one of the founding members, and I stopped writing for them because it was sort of fashion. I was writing fashion articles. So I had to take some strategic steps and move on from sort of my past and towards my future. So that's what I would say you need to do.
Okay, so there are two more questions. One of them is, how can one successfully manage a brand that has several businesses that are not really related in it, like a group of companies that is into agriculture, technology, catering, website development, digital marketing? So I'll take a stab at this. So I think that this is more of a corporate branding question, right? I think that for your personal, brand, you just have to position yourself as a serial entrepreneur in this case. I would also say that, you have to, sort of be careful, because they're so disjointed and, there's no real sort of thread that runs through them. You also have to be careful how you tie them together. So you have to create a story that makes sense, why you have all of these businesses. If not, you may be seen as, somebody that just has many hustles, right? And is not really building a business. So I think that what I would recommend is to really think about, how do you position yourself first? And then also, how do you position this group of companies? Are you running all of these companies? Does each of the companies have their own CEO and you are the group CEO? Because then you can position very differently, right? If there's a group CEO and you are, you oversee multiple CEOs that each run, individual businesses, then the diversity is fine. And then you can position yourself as the group CEO and sort of, talk about the the different businesses that you have, and why, if you started all of them, why you started all of them, and that you're a serial entrepreneur and you have many different passions. So I think there are ways to sort of spin that, but you have to be really, really careful. And I would also say, make sure that you focus on the businesses, grow them to a certain level, so that it's not just oh yeah, the catering business is a one-man business, the website development business is a one-man business, the agriculture business is a one-man business, right? Because then they're not really businesses. So I think build the businesses until they are, you know, really strong and big. And then once they are, then it's easier to position yourself as like a group CEO, you know, that is basically overseeing all of these different businesses. And there are many ways to sort of do that. Okay, Ijeoma, there's another question here. How can one balance personal branding with privacy, for instance, public profiles?
Okay, I am huge on privacy, massive. It's a, I'm a PR person, but I am very, very private. So, for example, I have two Instagram accounts. I have my private Instagram account and I have my public Instagram account. In my private Instagram account, for example, I have only like my close family and friends that follow me on there. While in my public Instagram account, it's open to all. And in terms of like messaging, this is where sort of like messaging comes into play, crafting your narrative comes into play. So in my public Instagram, you would notice it's very professional. It's about work, maybe a few things I do outside of work, but you would not see a lot of my family on there. You would not see really, really personal things. It's more about like my business, what we're doing, how I'm growing my business, when we win an award, when we're having an event, when we're working on a client. So it's very focused on Redrick and what we're doing. While in my personal account, my personal profile, it's more about like my life, right? So I think it is very easy to do. It's very, very easy to do. There are certain things about my life that a lot of people do not know because I choose to keep it that way because it's private for me. So I think that it's all about controlling the messaging and controlling and owning your narrative. So by having your public profile, you can choose. Your public profile can focus on your work, your goals. That's sort of like your personal branding, sort of template, right? Where you can talk about the things you want to talk about that concern your work, that concern the matters that are of interest to you. Then have your, if you want to have a private account, yes, people want a personal touch, but personal touch does not necessarily mean that people want to know who your mother is or know who your sister is. And you know, that doesn't mean that's not what necessarily personal touch means. Personal touch means maybe people want to see your face once in a while. You can talk about certain things that are, so for example, even in my personal brand, one of the things, in my public brand, one of the things I like to share that's very personal to me are my female friendships, because I feel like that is also critical to my brand and my brand persona, because female friendships are very important to me. Even in our company, we're sort of an all-women crew. So, you know, girl, I'm all for womanhood. So if you notice, like, those sort of things come across, and that's how I sort of get to share some personal aspects of my life, but it's still very controlled. So I would say you can have free to have two separate accounts: your private account for your family and friends, where you can be as private and as intimate as possible as you want, and then you have your public account where you're able to sort of control the narrative and control the aspects of your life that you want the public to see, you know. So that's what I would advise, but it's very doable.
Okay, so Biola has put in a lot of questions here. So I'll take the first one. The first one is, how can you grow your Instagram footprint and what works? And the second one is, how can you get brands to collaborate with you in ways that offer cash? So basically, how do you monetize? And then the last question is, how can PR and branding be accessible in a way that is affordable for individuals looking to grow their profile? So I'll take a stab at the first two, and then maybe you can add to the second one and then take the last one. So in terms of building your Instagram footprint, there are many different ways of doing that. You know, obviously, creating content that is valuable is one of them. Also making sure that you engage with the right type of hashtags. So as a digital agency, what we spend a lot of time on when we onboard clients, and this is regardless of whether it's for a personal brand or for a public company, we spend a lot of time doing hashtag research. Hashtag research is pretty much like the most important thing, when you are marketing on Instagram, because hashtag research helps you identify hashtags that will get you a wider visibility. Now on Instagram, you can follow hashtags, which means that people can discover your content as long as the content is hashtagged with the right type of hashtag. Obviously it has to be content that also fits to the hashtag. So don't just take popular hashtags and put your content out there, but make sure that it fits. Another thing is, engage your audience. Create a lot of stories where you're engaging there are stickers that have questions. You can have polls on your Instagram. You can, even do posts where you ask questions and you get people to send you their responses, and you figure out how you make sure that you engage your audience properly, using your profile basically, right? So those are some of the key things that I would say. In terms of attracting brands that, so that you can, sort of over time monetize, your efforts, I would say this is something that takes time, right? You won't monetize immediately, right? You have to build your following up to certain numbers, because what brands are looking out for, brands are looking for numbers, because they also want any type of collaboration that they do for you, with you to have some kind of outcome, right? Brands are looking for return on investment, so they're not doing it for fun. So they would probably rather go with an influencer that has, I don't know, 50K followers than someone who, doesn't. However, what we're seeing is that micro influencers, which are influencers that have less than 5,000 followers, are becoming, more and more popular, because they usually have a very intimate audience. And they basically engage with that audience in a very different way, right? And a lot of the time they will get more engagement than an influencer that has 50,000 followers. So it's also, how do you position yourself? How do you build in, sort of the names of those brands that you want to work with, tag them in some of the content, mention them, write blog posts that mention them, right? And you can do this in a really good, and interesting way, where you, for example, you're into wealth creation. So you could, for example, write a blog post where you compare different types of financial products, right? Different types of investment plans, maybe US dollar investment plans of the 3 platforms that you really love. And then you say, this is my favorite platform, because you really want to work with that brand, right? At some point they will start noticing that type of activity, and then they will, start engaging, with you as well. So I don't know, Ijeoma, do you want to add anything to that particular question about monetization? Sorry, I think I muted you by mistake. Trying to unmute you. I don't know what's going on. 1 second. Okay.
What I would say is, even in terms of like monetizing, the most important thing is to focus on building your platform. So for example, as a PR agency, we're constantly on the scout for new people, for our various clients, new influencers across various industries. And this is what all PR agencies are doing as well, all digital agencies are doing as well. We're trying to sort of discover who is new. And the only way we kind of know who is new is the people who are consistent, right? So what I would say is focus on building your platform, focus on being consistent with it, and also even in terms of streamlining that. So straight off the bat, when I go to your page, I should know these are your interests, these are the things you cover. So your content is streamlined. You're not doing this today and that tomorrow and that the next day. It's kind of streamlined. You talk about two things, that's your focus. So focus, and then just build content, because when I tell you that we're always on the scout and on the lookout for new profiles, new influencers, new brands to collaborate with, it is insane. And like Nkemdi said, there is a rise in micro influencers. So do not think that because, oh, I have small numbers now, that is why I'm not going to, Aviola is making me laugh. That is why I'm not going to, that's why I'm going to do whatever. No, micro influencing is very, very powerful. I personally prefer, as a company, we prefer to work with micro influencers because we get more engagement from them. So what I would say is just focus on building your brand and your brand and your content, because when it's time, we will come to you. Because every PR agency, I was talking to a publicist, a well-known publicist in the industry the other day, and she said they just started handling this brand, and because they started handling this brand, they literally had to go and find 200, a certain group of people, and they had to get a database of over 200, 300 of them. So for 2 weeks, her and her team were scouting for the people with that type of content and who own that space. So like I said, when we notice that you create content and people are engaging, it makes us look good. Our campaigns are successful for it. So just keep on the good work and just keep be consistent with your content. Now, in terms of like PR and digital free ways and easy ways to get sort of PR and sort of digital, so one tip I would give is build relationships with journalists within your industry. So if you are into finance, if you are into tech, like for example, when Nkemdi tells her story, she talks about how because her father because he was into tech, he was in tech, and he had over the years he had built relationships with all the tech editors and journalists. When she spoke at any panel, he would make sure she's in the papers, right? And that's because of the relationship he built. So if you're in tech, if you're in finance, if you're in food, if you're in beauty, whatever industry you are, an easy way, a tip I would give is to build relationships with journalists in those areas. Pick up the newspaper and find out who's constantly writing about in your industry. Who are the journalists constantly on that beat, right? So who are the journalists constantly on that beat, and build a personal relationship with them. What then happens is, because we as a PR person, we have those relationships and we do it constantly, right? Because what then happens is you're able to, they're running a story or something, and they're able to sort of contact you and see if you'll be a part of it or offer you something within those lines, but that's a free tip I would say. Build those relationships. And also there are certain platforms which also promotes sort of startup stories, for example. So search and research online. There are various of them. BN they do some features that they profile certain sort of founders. Lioness of Africa. There's so many of those. There's some of those platforms out there. So research into those platforms and put your story out there and submit your story, and you might be picked up.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I think you can also, if you enjoy writing, you can also contribute to some of these publications as an editor, right? And then you basically just have to be consistent with the writing, because they would ask you to commit to maybe like one article a week or something, right? But that's also a really good way to build your profile in a way that you don't have to pay for the PR, right? And I think that while we're talking about paying, I also think that you have to remember that it is an investment, right? So the same way that you would tell your client, that they should invest in maybe getting more knowledge about wealth management and wealth creation, is the same way that we tell our clients, invest in your brand, right? Because it will pay back. It is an investment, and there will be a return on investment over time. Okay, so there's actually a question here about financial implications. So Dottie, we'll come to that in a little bit. It's actually part of the presentation. Bila, we're going to come back to your questions about personal style and stuff in a little bit. I think let's move on in the presentation, and we'll take some of these questions later. If not, I think we'll be here for a really long time. But thank you so much for those questions. Keep them coming, please. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about the personal branding journey, and I'm going to hand over to Ijeoma to sort of go through this.
So basically, I think key to that journey is framing your purpose, right? So answering questions like, who am I? Finding your why. What is my why? What are the goals, right, I want to achieve? And what is my unique value proposition? So in terms of who are you, who do you want to, who are you in terms of what is your public persona, right? For me, my public persona is I'm a communications expert, right? Across lifestyle, consumer, brands, right? But for you, what is that? Who are you? So it's very important that you kind of know who you are, because that's sort of the starting point in the personal branding journey. Now, finding your why, right? Why are you here? What is your purpose, right? For me, if I use myself as an example, I think it is one of the reasons why I even got into PR, and one of the reasons I got into PR and communications was I wanted to change the way it was being done, right? I wanted to come and sort of give it some sort of fresh life, right? So I would say for me, sort of being part of that new generation movement of new PR publicists that are sort of doing things differently, are bringing sort of a fresh perspective. PR used to be just newspapers. Now people think about it differently in terms of strategy. It just used to be, carry a story, get a journalist, give it to him, this person, this person, this person, this person. But for me, my why is I want to be positioned as I am transforming the PR agency. I am with my campaigns, we're constantly sort of disrupting and sort of bringing innovation to how PR is seen and how PR is viewed, right? Now, framing your goals. So for me, when I was transitioning from fashion to PR, my goal was to position myself as a communications expert. Now my goals are a lot different. Now for you, your goals could be, I want to move from, I'm a C-level executive and I want to move to, I want to be in government someday, right? I want to sit on boards. Or for you, it could be, I'm a mid-level manager and I'm moving up the corporate ladder and I want to be able to attract certain positions maybe in tech or even within my industry, but sort of higher level position, more executive roles, more senior roles. So it's very important when you're getting into the personal branding journey, you identify your goals so that why you even need goals, so that you can assess throughout the journey. You don't want to start something and then you don't even know if it's working or not, because you don't know where you're headed. So you have to sort of know where you're heading to, so that at certain points you can assess and say, okay, this is my goal. I've been on this journey now for 1 year, for 2 years. Have I reached my goal? Okay, no, I've not reached my goal. Am I closer to reaching my goal? Yes, you're closer to reaching your goal. So having goals at the beginning of the journey is very, very important. Now, what is your unique value proposition? So what is that sort of fire burning within you and within your purpose that differentiates you, or that differentiates you and defines you? So you sort of have to figure that out as well. With Nkemdilim and I, we sort of help you and walk you through these processes. We help you sort of identify who you are. we sort of help you sort of zero in on your why and zero in on your unique value proposition and say, okay, this is why you are here. And we feel like positioning you within this space would make you reach your goals. So the next thing is identifying your personal brand, right? So it's kind of, you assess where you are, right? Where am I now, right? What is my digital footprint? So, for example, do I have stories about me? Have I conducted certain interviews? Did I go for a conference and was I featured? Where am I? What is my digital footprint? Do I have an Instagram page? Do I have a LinkedIn page? Do I have a Facebook page? What do I have? So basically kind of assessing where you are, right? What is the status quo of your personal brand? So basically right now, what is your personal brand saying about you? And you have to be, I think we all have to be sort of honest, right? Because if you're not honest, then you're going to, it's sort of when you start. So for us in PR and in communications, we're driven a lot by insight. So insight is sort of like knowledge, right? Know-how. If we get the insight wrong, whatever strategies or whatever strategies we put in place, it's not going to lead to the desired outcome because the insight was wrong in the first place. So if you do not properly assess your personal brand, maybe you think, so for example, you think you are you're sort of more established than you are, or you think that, maybe you wrote one article maybe 3 years ago about, so maybe you're in the financial sector, and you wrote one article 3 years ago and you feel like, I am a thought leader because I've written that one article. I'm sorry, you're not yet a thought leader. You have to sort of have written multiple articles. So kind of sort of assessing where your personal brand is now, right? Do you have brand assets? And what do I mean by brand assets? So assets are sort of things that you own as a brand. So your LinkedIn page is a brand asset, for example. Your website is a brand asset, for example. Your Wikipedia page is a brand asset. Although Wikipedia pages are not open to everyone, because to sort of have a Wikipedia page, you kind of have to prove that you're a public persona. So that means you even have to have tons and tons and tons and tons of like links and articles about you. But there are certain people who have Wikipedia pages, who people have because they are public personas, and it's very common here in Nigeria. They are public personas. So somebody somewhere has gone and created a Wikipedia page for them. But the Wikipedia page for them is one completely outdated. Maybe when the Wikipedia page, maybe their journey has changed. So maybe when it started, they were a founder. Now they founded multiple companies, and now they've moved from being an entrepreneur to a serial entrepreneur. But their Wikipedia page is completely it doesn't reflect their journey or the changes that have come about in their journey. So basically, what are your brand assets that you currently have, and what are they saying about you? Then who are your role models? So this is basically even helping us in building your brand. So who do you want to be like in a few years? Who are the people that you look up to? And you can look, and role models, you can look up to people for different aspects, right? Okay, I like this person because I like the way they've been able to merge, their past career with their future career. I like how this person has transitioned from the corporate world to life as an entrepreneur. I like how, so there are different aspects of people that you might admire, but it's good to sort of have and know who your role models are, and we use that as a building block to sort of define and craft what your personal brand is. The next thing is identifying your target audience. Now, we keep saying target audience. What exactly is a target audience, right? Target audience they're just people that you want to sort of reach out to, people that you want to connect with, people that you want your brand to sort of engage with. That is your target audience, right? Who do I want engaging with my brand or who do I want to engage with my personal brand? Who do I want to connect with my personal brand, right? These are the people that we call your target audience. So first you have to know, who am I targeting? So for example, I'm going to use this as an example. You want to be sitting on boards, right? So in that situation, I want to be in the next 2 to 3 years. And I'm saying this knowing that you have the credibility and the profile to back up this goal. Because you also, as they say with goals have to be smart. So they have, they have to be realistic, right? So there's no need saying I want to sit on a board in 5 years or in 2 years, and basically your profile, your CV does not show that you are ready or you are a good candidate to be on a board. Then that's just a pipe dream. So it's very important that in identifying sort of your goals, you have to sort of be realistic and, like I said, honest. You have to be honest with yourself, because if we start a process with dishonesty, it's not going to lead us anywhere. So for example, I want to sit on a board in 2 years, and I have my profile is banging, I have the credibility, I'm just waiting for that call and I am ready. So who should I be targeting? So who are the people who potentially sit on boards, right? So maybe I should be joining like major CEO networks, in everybody, lawyers, and there's always like a legal people are sort of very involved in like being in boards. So who are my contacts within that? Who are the contacts I have? Look within your network. What networks can I join? What associations? What sort of fellowships? What sort of communities can I join to sort of to sort of engage with my target audience, right? You might not necessarily find the people on Facebook, for example, because they're even engaging. Because another thing that's very important to note about like targeting and sort of platforms is you always need to meet your target audience at the point where at platforms where they want to engage with you on a certain level. What am I saying? So for example, I want to be part of a CEO network, and this CEO network, a lot of the people within the CEO network sit on various boards. But maybe some of these people have social media pages, maybe Instagram, they're on Instagram, but they're on Instagram because Instagram is sort of their way of distressing, right? And catching up with what their children are doing. They're not there on Instagram looking for who the next sort of prospects, right? Or the next big person, in sort of the corporate world. They're not on Instagram for those reasons. They're on Instagram to sort of just play and relax. So thinking that I want to be on a board and I'm going to start following this person on Instagram, while it's good, that that should not sort of be your sole strategy, right? But when these people are sort of in this same person, when they're in their CEO networks, they're part of a CEO network, and when they're meeting and engaging, this is where they sort of come to find out who is new in the game, who is doing something exciting in the game. When you meet them in that network, you have more of an opportunity to connect with them on that level that you want to connect with them. Not on the level of, oh, this girl, or this man, oh, doing nice stuff on Instagram. I like your photo here, I like your photo, but I'm not really going in depth, right? But when they're in that platform, within that network, within that environment, they want to engage with you on that level. So it's very important to also know that in identifying your target audience, and also in identifying the platforms and the platforms and that you engage with them, you also need to know, how do they engage with this platform, and is this the right platform for me to engage with them for the goal I want to achieve? So that's very important. So do you have more than one target audience? I remember in our Instagram live 2 days ago, Nkemdilim shared how she has sort of like three sort of target audiences. So she has like, the younger people who are looking to have for sort of mentorship. Then she has, clients, new clients, people who potential clients. And then she has like her global community, and how she uses various platforms to sort of attract these sort of different audiences. So you have to identify for yourself, do I have one single audience, or do I have multiple? And if I have multiple, who are they? Are they like, am I in a position to mentor? So there are a lot of young people looking to me for mentorship, or am I in a position where I want to also have global opportunities, right? Or am I in a position where I also want to leverage my personal brand to build my business, right? And to build my client base. So you sort of also have to identify that. So that's why your goal sort of gives you clarity. So once you identify your goals, why I'm doing this in the first place, it sort of helps you with the other steps as you go along. Now, where are these people? So that's what I talked about previously in terms of, okay, now I know these are the people I'm targeting. Where are they? Where can I find them, right? So for example, I'm going to use Nkemdi again. So for her, for the mentorship, they're all on Instagram, right? For her, that's the platform, because for her in the future, she sees herself building some sort of like mentorship platform, right? For her, for clients, when she goes for a lot of speaking engagements, she's noticed that that's been a huge pull for her. So from those speaking engagements, she gets leads, she gets clients. While from her LinkedIn and from sharing her thought leadership, she's been able to connect with global opportunities. So, and also being part of certain networks, certain sort of WhatsApp group. So she even spoke about how like a WhatsApp group opened her up to an opportunity, right? To a major opportunity. So where are these people? Are they in this special WhatsApp group with all the top CEOs? You need to be there and find out how you can get there. So once you identify your audience, then you now have to identify where can you find them. So am I finding them? Are they members of Wimbies? Are they members of a CEO network? Are they members of what's that popular club? The Met Club, Metropolitan Club? Are they members of Ikoyi Club? Are they members of, do they play golf? And are they members of this special golf club? So these are things you sort of have to start sort of identifying and, plugging into these networks. Now, going into sort of defining your communication strategy. So basically, we've talked about all the steps, and now it's more like, okay, communication strategy. So communications is very, very integral to your personal brand because it gives you visibility, right? And visibility, as we've identified, is very, very key, because if you're not visible, then people do not know what you're doing, right? You're just doing something with, and your friends are hailing you, which is great, fantastic. You love friends and family. Your employees, your team, everybody is hailing you, but then it's not. You see yourself beyond that. You want to move beyond that because you have some personal goals. So visibility is very, very key. So that's where communications comes to play. So what are your key messaging pillars? This is very, 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 very important, right? So now that you've identified your brand, now that you've identified your why, right? Now that you've identified your target audience and you've identified where they are, your messaging pillars is your narrative. Messaging is your narrative. So basically, what are you saying, right? And what will you be saying? So within your brand, you identify, I always say that you always have to keep things focused, right? So don't go to, even though you're such a multifaceted person, when you decide that you're building your personal brand, you have to sort of focus and streamline, right? So you can't be too many things. It gets, like Nkemdi said, brand confusion. I can't, so, in the live, I talked about how, I am a DIY interior decorator. I'm also a fitness enthusiast. I also can, a DIY chef. I also do communications, and this is quite niching, but I can be a hair braider. So what am I saying? That there are these sort of multiple things, right? But I can't just put everything there, because somebody will be like, today you're this, tomorrow you're that, next tomorrow you're this. I've chosen to focus on communications and the work I do within that space, right? And within that, and also I have some sort of interests, which sort of form part of my messaging pillars. So for example, like I said, we're a team in my office, we're a team of women. So women empowerment is very, very important to me. So you would see me talking about like issues that, you know, that deal with sort of women and moving the female and the girl child along, right? Another thing that's very important to me is education. So within that, we've also even created a community impact project where we sort of focus on educating people within sort of transitioning people within like university to like their next jobs and to make them more employable. So these are sort of my 3 sort of key messaging pillars, right? Communications, women empowerment, education, right? So it's very important, and you will hardly see me discuss or talk outside of these lines, right? I'm really focused on my messaging and my content on these lines. And you know, being when you're able to sort of streamline and focus, then you sort of repeat, right? Repetition is very key in terms of building memory and association. So I'm constantly talking about communication. I'm constantly talking about women. I'm constantly talking about education. I'm constantly talking. So it builds association. So when people are thinking about your brand, they associate your brand with these 3 sort of key message pillars. So that is why it's always good to also not go too far. Keep it to 3 or 4 max key message pillars and just build and repeat and build and keep echoing it, because with repetition comes associations, and that is what you want at the end of the day. Very key, people to associate your brand with certain issues and certain topics. How do you keep up to date with your target audience? Where, when, and how often? So this is where strategy comes into play. So where are they? So you identify where they are. So where they are is where you want to be. You have to be where they are. Now, in terms of how, there are various ways, and I think we'll get to that in point 5 towards the end of this slide, where we sort of talk about digital and PR integration. And how often, I think you have to sort of decide for yourself. I think the most important thing with messaging is consistency. So if you decide I'm going to do it 2 times a week, right? Do it 2 times a week. If you decide I'm going to do it 3 times a week, do it 3 times a week. I think where consistency is the key thing. You can't do it, have ginger and fire, and you're doing it, I'm doing it twice a week, week 1 twice a week, week 2 twice a week, week 3 twice a week, the fire quenches, and then for 1 month, 2 months, you are completely quiet and silent, right? You have to sort of be consistent. So I always say to people, start with what you can, start with what you're comfortable and what you're consistent, what you will be consistent at doing. If you say, oh, I'm going to start contributing to an article for Business Day or for the Vanguard or whatever platform, and they say, can you do it weekly? And you agree to do it weekly, you need to be consistent. If you know you can't commit to it weekly, then do it bi-monthly, or do it once a month. You know, do something that make sure you are consistent, because consistency is the most important thing. There's no point starting and stopping, starting and stopping, starting and stopping, starting and stopping. It does not pay in the long run. So people will be like, where is she? Oh, okay, she's back now. Oh, where, you know, so consistency is the most important thing. Do you have an existing footprint online and offline and online? So for example, what is sort of like digital online footprint? So are you on Medium? Are you on Instagram? Are you on Facebook? Are you on Twitter? Are you on LinkedIn? Offline, are you involved in any associations? Have you been into any sort of speaking engagements that you can leverage off of in the future to sort of get more speaking engagements? So find out if you do have any of those, and you definitely need to then build on that, right? Have you been featured in the press or recognized by any association? So do you have any press features? If you don't, maybe you need to start working on having certain press features, right? That's where you need a PR person to sort of help you, or if you want to go about it on your own, like I mentioned before, forming relationships with journalists and, journalists within your beat and within your industry that write about your industry would be a good way to go. Because at a certain point in time, to sort of build thought leadership and to build sort of leadership within a certain industry, you need visibility in the press. You need visibility in the press. It amplifies your profile. It amplifies your personal brand. How do you plan to leverage your network? I think identifying the network you have and also having a strategy in place to sort of leverage those individual networks, and also know what each network is good for. And even before you join any network, why am I even joining this network? I think time is very precious. When you're investing your time in something, you need to know, okay, I'm investing my time in this because of this, right? So even in choosing the networks you are going into, and the offline and online networks, there needs to be some sort of output, right? That's why you're putting in the input. That's why you're putting in the time to build the relationships within that network, to build relationships and to sort of groom those relationships within the networks. That's why you're putting input, because you want to get some output. Now, how do you position your brand through communications? This is where digital and PR comes into play. Like I said, at some point, to move towards thought leadership, and to sort of, especially when you're moving towards thought leadership and establishing yourself as a seasoned expert within a certain industry, you need to, digital and PR amplification is needed. Even so, for example, for career, people who are within careers, they might ask, oh, okay, how do I do sort of PR, or how do I position myself through communications within that framework? So, for example, you're the brand manager of a certain brand, and your company is launching a product, right? And you people are in the press. Find your way into that group picture that they are going to send to various brands, right? If you can, find your way. Because sometimes what I've noticed is these opportunities and these things are available, but people shy away from it. So there are ways within, even if you're sort of, you're a mid-level career professional and you're trying to grow, there are a lot of even communities outside of I would say print, digital communities. They're constantly hosting like lives, or constantly hosting like small sort of opportunities. Put yourself out there as a speaker. Put yourself out there as a moderator of a panel. There's certain ways. These are ways you can use communications to sort of position your brand, and use PR to position your brand. So in terms of byline contributions in newspapers, in terms of being like a contributor for a feature contributor and contributing an article in an area of interest, in terms of applying to be in certain to speak at certain conferences, even feature in certain podcasts, feature in certain IG lives that are going on. These are some of the ways that you can use sort of communications to sort of position your brand as a thought leader, or as a thought leader because I think at the end of the day, with every successful brand, in terms of when you're building your brand, thought leadership should be a goal. You want to be known as a leader in this industry. So when they are talking about the top people in this industry, my name is being called. I'm being recognized within that space, right? So these are ways that these are sort of strategies that you can implement, you know, to be at sort of speaking engagements, and even going back to how you leverage your network. There's certain people maybe within a group, you know, that they're always getting invited to one speaking engagement or the other. You can leverage of their network to say, okay, you were invited to this speaking, you spoke for this conference last year, I want to speak at this conference this year, can you put in a word for me? You know, I send in my profile, I send in my profile, I send in my CV, you know, and I pitch to sort of be a part of this conference. So these are the ways you can use PR, because PR deals with you know, things like speaking engagements, thought leadership placements, news, new visibility in print and offline through like features and contributory articles, etc. I'm sure Nkemdi would sort of jump in now to talk about digital.
Yeah, so I think that, you know, once you have some of this content, digital is a really great way to amplify that content. And also in terms of you know, becoming a thought leader, digital allows you to, you know, publish articles, whether it's on LinkedIn or you're using Medium or you're using a website to publish. They're really powerful ways of engaging. Now, you also have to think about, you know, when you think about content, you also have to think about distribution, right? So I've written this piece, how am I distributing it, right? And that is really where the work is, right? You have to figure out how you use your digital channels, the digital channels of friends, your employees even, and maybe your company brand to distribute the content that you're putting out there. And I think one of the key channels that, you know, I've also used a lot is WhatsApp. Simply because it allows you to directly share messages with people in a way that is not spammy, right? So if I send a message to someone and say, oh, hi, Ijeoma, how are you doing? You know, I just wrote this article today, you know, have a read, I hope you enjoy it, please share it with your friends, right? That please share it with your friends, because Ijeoma is my friend and she knows that the article is most likely going to be a good article, right? She will probably forward this article even if she doesn't read it, right? So that allows you to get a bigger distribution. Same thing on Instagram, basically asking people to share, right? And on LinkedIn as well. You can also have, you know, specific friends who you sort of help share each other's content, or your, as I said, your network. You can all share each other's content to amplify that content and help amplify the company brand. You know, when we talk about digital channels, so Ijeoma also mentioned podcasts, for example. That's a very strong channel. Video content is another very strong channel. You know, and thinking about your search engine footprint as well. So basically, how do you rank? If I Google you, you come up and what comes up about you, right? So owning that narrative, that space, and making sure that when, you know, you are publishing anything, it is being, so if it's a print publication, that it gets published online as well. And when you have the link, share that link widely, and make sure that you also sort of track. So on Instagram, you know, make sure that your Instagram account is set up as an Instagram business account, for example, right? Because that way you can actually track, you know, who's viewing your page, what type of audience you have, you know, the age range. So there you can verify whether the targeting that Ijeoma spoke about earlier is being done properly, and whether, you know, people are engaging with the message and the communications that you're putting out there. So measuring those efforts is really important, and digital is the perfect platform for you to really, really measure to the smallest metric possible, because you can see the views. LinkedIn, I love completely, because the measures on LinkedIn are really great. It tells you how many people who are executives or board members or mid-level managers or senior managers who have looked at your content. And by seeing that, you know that you're on the right track, you know. So digital is a really great way to sort of amplify your communications and take traditional methods of communicating into the digital space. Now, I want to give you guys a couple of tips and tricks that you can implement immediately. So you can optimize your LinkedIn profile using the LinkedIn Executive Handbook. So if you Google LinkedIn Executive Handbook, it will most likely come up. It may require you to fill in like your email address and some other information in order to download it, but it's basically a handbook that LinkedIn published where they help executives understand the key things to optimize on their profile, right? And you know, there are certain things in there that you would not normally maybe know. So that's one of the key things. Your LinkedIn profile is really important in your personal brand. Setting up Google Alerts. So I have Google Alerts on all variations of my name. I have Google Alerts on names of the companies that I either own or sit on their board, so that I can also be on top of news that is being published about them. And obviously for a personal brand, it is your own name. So if you have any type of nicknames, or maybe you've gotten married and you've changed your name, right? You still have to retain the Google Alerts for your old name, because it will take some time for people to actually start calling you by your new name. And you want to make sure that you don't miss anything at all, right? Another thing is use the same name for your social media handles across all of your platforms. So you can't be one thing in one platform and another thing in another platform. It's the same thing that applies for a corporate brand. Invest in professional photos. This is so important. So your photos should include a professional headshot, so that when they ask you to send a picture for, speaking at a conference, for example, or any other purpose, that you have a professional headshot that you can send in, and you're not sort of sending in one picture that you took outside of a party or outside of some kind of conference, or that you took in your office or something like that. Have a professional headshot. Have some power poses as well. Have pictures of you in action or you in your element. Have pictures in different outfits as well, so that the pictures are not always, oh, we know this picture is like 2 years old and she uses this picture all the time. However, once you have your set of professional pictures, you also have to make sure that these are the pictures that are being used to position you, so you use them in your PR, you use them in your digital, and you ensure that when people use other pictures that they may find on the internet, that you actually reach out to them and say, hey, here is actually the picture that I would like you to use. Mm-hmm. I don't want you to use this particular picture that you've used, right? That way, you also start streamlining the type of pictures that are out there about you, right? And then that also helps enhance your image in many, many ways. I already spoke earlier about brand hashtags, right? So include these in all of the posts that you do. So this is your own personal brand hashtag. So my personal brand hashtag, I have different ones. So I have Nkemdilim Uwaje Begho, right? I have Nkemdilim Uwaje Begho Speaks. Those are for my speaking engagements. And I have Nkemdilim Uwaje Begho Writes. Those are for all the articles I write. Now, what does that do for you? It basically allows you to segment, right? And if a person clicks on Nkemdilim Uwaje Writes, they will find all of the hashtags or all of the posts that I've done that have anything to do with anything that I've written, right? So that's a way for them to actually discover my content and specific content, right? Because I want them to discover more of my writing. So that's a way to sort of, sort of like tie specific type of posts to specific type of categories. And then create content and a content index for yourself. So this exercise is extremely helpful. It's also extremely tedious, especially if you do it late in your brand building like I did. So I sort of did this, I think 3 years ago or so. And I started sort of categorizing all of the stuff that I've done, so that I can understand what are the things that I've been talking about. So I sort of did my work backwards in terms of identifying my messaging pillars, right? I basically said, okay, so what are all the press releases that have been published about me? Sorry. What is all the stuff that is out there, whether it's videos, whether it's interviews, whether it's feature articles or anything else? I listed them out by type, right? So whether it's a video or a podcast or an article, and then, I also listed out, you know, the focus area. Is it focused on technology? Is it focused on education? IJ, please, can you take over? I need to drink some water.
Okay. So basically, create a content index of yourself, categorize everything. So basically, like she was saying, she started using her messaging pillars, right? So everything that has been written about you, or any sort of interview piece, any articles on what are those, put them into categories. So is this, does this sort of focus on my work with education? Does this focus on my work with tech? Does this focus on my work with finance? You know, in doing that, you then, it's a great exercise to do, because you then realize, and you can then figure out, is my sort of content streamlined, or is it all over the place, right? So that it also helps you, it's sort of a process that helps you sort of streamline your content. But also, another good thing is that you're also very intentional about the areas you want to build on. So if by doing that you realize, you know, I you know, these are my 3 message pillars, but you know, in all my, you know, in all that's out there about me, I've only focused on one, right? And I'm not focusing on the other 2. Then you're able to say, okay, it's time I focus on this other 2, or it's time I focus on this one that I haven't focused on. So in doing that, it helps you to also, sort of identify, know, one, am I moving in the right direction? Are my messaging pillars being accurately captured in sort of my speaking engagements, in the articles written about me, in the interviews I've done? So one, is it being accurately captured? And secondly, if it isn't being accurately captured, how do I make sure and ensure that my 3, I'm giving, you know, a considerable amount of coverage and visibility to my 3 or 4 key message pillars.
Yeah, and just to add to that, so what the content index also does for you, it creates a database, right? A repository that you can always pull from. So for example, I did a TED talk in 2012 or 2013, I'm not really sure. But that TED talk is on education. And, you know, I watched it recently, and then I was like, oh, I can actually share this again, because nothing much has changed. And, you know, the situation is still very much the same. And education is one of the key messages that I, you know, put out there. So it allows you to also have a pool of, you know, sort of content that you can always, you know, dip into and say, okay, I need a message on technology, or I need a message on education, or I need a message on youth empowerment, or, you know, I need a message on innovation or disruption, or whatever it is. And then you can find it in your content index, and you can easily then share it. Also, when you're, you know, sort of trying to track your journey. So what I did is I indexed it by year as well, just to be able to see, you know, how many things were published about me every single year, you know, and in what categories, and like IJ said, what do I need to really focus on in order to, you know, get to the next level. So it's really great for repurposing content and just having a database. And by the time you've done this exercise once, when new stuff gets published, you just add to it, and it keeps growing. And you always have that index that you can then, you know, sort of reference again. So it's for me, it was a really good exercise. It took forever, you know, but it was definitely worth it. So now we'll jump into, you know, sort of working with us. So why do you need professional help? If you're still not convinced that you need professional help, and you still think that you can do it yourself, here are 4 points that hopefully will convince you, right? So the first thing, combined, we have over 25 years of experience building corporate brands and positioning their leaders. We help you skip the learning curve, right? So there are a lot of things that we've seen, whether it is while positioning corporate brands or positioning personal brands, that lead to mistakes or bumps in the road or delays. And we can basically help you sort of skip over all of those things and accelerate achieving your goals. We also help you gain clarity and ask questions that will help you dig deeper and become more intentional. What I've seen a lot of the time, there are people who are like, oh, I want to build my personal brand, by the time I ask them 3 or 4 questions, they're like, oh, wow, I've not thought about that, or I haven't thought about this. You know, I'm not really sure. And those are the questions that professionals can actually help streamline, you know, your thinking by asking those questions. And we'll also leverage our experience, our network and connections to ensure that we position you and the brand successfully. So I think this is really probably the biggest plus of working with professionals. So let's say you wanted, you know, to be published in, you know, a newspaper or a particular publication. Like Ijeoma said, there are opportunities that come to publicists like her that wouldn't come to mere mortals like us, right? So she would, you know, get a request from a company that will say, okay, or a publication that would say, okay, you know what, we're looking for someone in technology that can give some light on the 4th Industrial Revolution. And Ijeoma can then say, ah, okay, Nkem, you know, is one of my clients, and you know, she really is also a thought leader in this field. You should consider her. And then she pushes that and positions that, right? So that is one of the things that we can do for you also, to look at what are the opportunities that are out there that we have access to that we can then share with you as well. Now, what do we do? So we work with you to develop your brand and your all important narrative, right? So those are the messaging pillars that Ijeoma talked about. And then we take a deep dive into your journey. And the reason why we do that is so that we can also craft your story. It's really important to have a story, right? So when I tell my story, my dad is always a very central part of that story, because, you know, he is one of the biggest influences that has brought me into technology, because he's been in technology for the last, you know, 30 plus years. And that, you know, is an integral part of my story, and it is in all of my communication, right? And that is, I think, you know, a lot of people, you know, so for example, I was at a conference, and, you know, I actually saw one of my dad's friends, and, you know, and he said to me, he said, you know, Nkem, you really need to focus more on being a 2nd generation, you know, IT professional. So I was like, that sounds great. And I added that into my profile, right? And that word alone has really helped me, you know, position even in a stronger way, because now it's like, this is historic. It's, you know, a foundation of technology. This is where, you know, how she grew up. And Tekabal did a, you know, Lagos Women in Technology, you know, and they coined it the natural home in technology from childhood, right? So that is part of my story, right? And it's really important that you pick some of those elements from your journey out so you can craft that story. And then obviously we help you identify your target audience. A lot of the time what I see is that people are communicating, but they're communicating without really, you know, having a target audience. And when you do that, it's like winking in the dark, right? You're winking, nobody else knows that you're winking, and you don't really get any results, right? The boy that you want to dance with is not going to come over because he cannot see you winking at him. And then also using the appropriate channels. So I've seen a lot of the time where people mix channels, where, you know, they're posting stuff that really should not be on LinkedIn, and they're posting stuff that, you know, is a little bit maybe too serious on Instagram. And they're not really leveraging the channels in the right way. So we actually help you leverage those channels and help you discover the channels that are right for you. And then we basically create a customized positioning roadmap to success. So in a nutshell, that means that we help you with strategy, with branding, with digital, and with PR. Let's see, there are a couple of questions. Let me see what they are. Okay. Okay, so now let's quickly go over our plans, and then we can take some more questions afterwards. So we have tailored packages that cater to all your needs, whether you're at the beginning of your personal branding journey, or whether you've come further along and basically just looking for optimization of your brand. So we have a standard package, and we would work with you for a duration of 4 weeks. And then we have an advanced package where we work with you for a duration of 6 weeks. Now this sounds really, really short, right? But what we want to achieve with this is basically to give you the tools, number one, and the foundation and a roadmap, right? And a detailed implementation plan that will help you on the journey of building your personal brand, because building your personal brand is something that you do over time, right? So we will help position you, and we have some additional add-ons that would go beyond this time period if you're interested in further working with us, right? But the 4 to 6 week, sort of optimization and, discovery process is so that you have a solid strategy, a solid content plan, a solid PR plan, a solid digital strategy as well. So we'll sort of show you all of the things that go into that. So, this is our standard plan and the cost of the standard plan. So we have a 30-minute consultation with lead brand experts. So that's with Ijeoma and myself. We have a personal branding questionnaire that will basically help you, sort of really do a lot of deep thinking about, what it is that you want to achieve and all of those areas that we talked about, right? And it is really structured the same way that we've structured this presentation in terms of identifying your purpose, then figuring out, what is the status quo of your brand, figuring out your target demographic, and figuring out your messaging. And once we have the results of that questionnaire, we then have 2 separate consultations, one digital strategy consultation and one PR and communications consultation. That will then be taken and then we do an actual strategy development for you, right? Once we've developed your strategy, so your strategy development again would then outline and really hone into what is the strategy that you should deploy? What are the channels that you should be using? How do you position yourself properly, right? What are the steps that you need to take? What are the different, aspects of what you have to achieve? We would then also help you develop a logo and your brand collateral. So banners for your social media, Instagram highlights, your social media templates that you can put into Canva so that you can then create posts by yourself that are uniform, and that are easily identifiable, and that when people share them, they have your branding on them. We would then also create a magazine style profile for you. So this is basically creating a profile that you can send when you are applying for speaking engagements, or if they invite you to be part of a mentorship network or whatever it is, you can then send in that magazine style profile. And I can only emphasize how important this is. So I have one, and I think I created it at some point last year. And when I send that profile, there's always a response, always a comment, right? That profile does not get, passed by. It is usually, wow, this is amazing. Oh my God, so impressive. I can't believe how many things you've done, because that profile actually outlines every single thing that I have done. But it looks like a magazine, so it's super glossy. The pictures are absolutely amazing, if I may say so myself. And it has the effect that people basically feel like, okay, you know what, this is not just somebody who sent a Word document with her bio. Then we also would create a basic content plan for you. So the content plan would basically go over all the different channels and the type of content that you should be posting on those different channels, the frequency at which you should be posting, and would have some content examples so that when you're doing your actual posts, you can use that as a guide, and you can have that consistency that Ijeoma was talking about, because the same thing, goes for corporate brands as well. And those are the same methods. They have messaging pillars, they have a target audience, they have a content plan. And then obviously you would have a PR plan as well that would basically detail how and where you should, do your PR. And basically just give you a really good roadmap of what are the activities that you should be doing to position yourself properly, right? So this is basically the standard package. The cost of it is $835,000 to be paid in 2 separate installments. And as I said, the timeline is a 4-week timeline. So the advanced plan is basically has everything that the standard package has. But then it has, in addition to that, optimization of your social media channels. And this goes across all of your social media channels. we help you with your hashtag research, and we help you set up your Google alerts. Then we also help you set up your personal blog and create a content strategy specifically for your blog, right? Because a blog usually has to have a very specific content strategy. And then there is a PR implementation strategy as well that, you know, is even more detailed than the PR plan. And Ijeoma, maybe you can add some words to exactly what that PR implementation strategy, you know, how it differentiates between the PR plan and the strategy.
So with the PR implementation strategy, it actually gives you, so for people who want to handle their PR themselves, because if you notice, we have as an add-on features and interviews, but if you want to handle your PR yourself, we have insight into platforms, networks, where you can basically get free features and free sort of features, free profiles, if you have the sort of profile that can support getting these features. So that's what the implementation strategy is, basically giving you access to all those, to that sort of like database of sort of like platforms where you can get free features, free interviews, free profiling. So we will sort of have a strategy and give you access to those platforms.
Okay, so basically that's the advanced plan. So the total cost of that is 1.1 million. And then we have add-ons as well. So there's basically helping you set up your Wikipedia page. As Ijeoma mentioned already, this is subject to you qualifying for a Wikipedia page. So not everybody can have a Wikipedia page. We also offer personal brand website development. And this is you know, dependent on the functionality that you require. We help you create newsletter templates. So this is for people who are actually, you know, sort of sending out communications via email to their email database on a frequent basis. And, you know, we basically help you set up your template and also help you identify the right type of email marketing platform that you should be using for that. We also have a photography partner where you can get your professional pictures taken, you know, and so we can basically help you sort of, you know, do that introduction and pass you on to the photography partner. Then we also have, you know, a package for feature interviews in publications, you know, so this would basically be to get the publications that align with your target demographic, that align with your messaging, and get you placed into those publications. And obviously those publications are usually not for free. So the fee that you're paying there is actually the fee
for the publication
placement, right? But you know, so the reason why you would go through a PR agency, right, to do a placement in a publication is because the PR agency can always leverage their, first of all, their knowledge of what day is the best day to publish, and also their knowledge on, or the relationship that they have maybe with the editor to say, hey, can you publish this? And then the editor may say, you know what, that day we're running this really big story, your story is going to drown.
Yeah.
You can say, okay, you know what, let's publish it the next day. You never get that insight. Okay, Ijeoma, please.
Yeah, and I want to also add that costs vary in terms of in Nigeria, costs vary. So most of when we sort of do interviews and do positioning interviews and paid interviews, we leverage on our relationships to get a substantially reduced rate in comparison to if you were to go there on your own. So so that's sort of one key thing, because you can say, oh, I'm paying anyway, why don't I just go to This Day or Vanguard and, you know, pay? But the truth of the matter is that costs vary. So as publicists who have relationships, we have ways, we have channels that we use to ensure we get visibility, but at the best cost, you know, for that.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a couple of questions here. So Remy said, what about people in the diaspora? So the services are open to people in the diaspora as well. I mean, digital is digital regardless of where you are. And Ijeoma actually also has links to international publications. I don't know whether you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, so basically we've been privileged to work with certain brands that require us to work across Nigeria. So we do have relationships beyond Nigeria, and then our company has a key strategic partner. Well, we have key strategic partnerships with with a particular global PR agency that's located in South Africa, Dubai, LA, and the UK, so and Paris as well. So we do have those relationships that we can and that network that we can always tap into for our clients in the diaspora.
Okay, so then there's another question here. Can you pick and choose which services you need? For example, you may already have your logo and brand collateral. Yes, so if there are things that you already have, you know, then obviously we would take them out. Our advice, however, would be, you know, obviously, like, I mean, a logo and brand collateral is easy to take out. But if you said you wanted to take out, you know, maybe, oh, I don't want to do a consultation, we would then say we can't work with you, right? If you say you don't want a strategy, but you want all the other stuff, we would also not necessarily, you know, work with you, because we want to make sure that we're doing it the right way, and that, you know, we are actually giving you the right tools to position, and not just giving you, you know, half of the ingredients to cook the soup, right? Mm-hmm. So I think for us, it's really, really important that you have all of the ingredients to make a really, really yummy meal that you will remember for a long time, and that is effective as well. Okay, thanks Remy for that suggestion. We will look into that, how we can basically highlight the ones that are optional. Okay, then there's another question. How long is this opportunity open for, or when will you stop taking clients? So we haven't really thought about this. Yeah, I think that for now, we are definitely open to taking clients. I don't think that this is an opportunity that will go away. We've already started sort of talking about additional products that we can build on this for people who, you know, cannot necessarily afford these packages that we have. So we're working on, you know, some more affordable packages that are for maybe people who are still trying to build their brand, but are trying to do it by themselves, right? So all of that is still in the works. So in my mind, there's no really finite date where we will stop taking clients. Okay, let's maybe go to the next, sorry. So we also have a special offer. So we're going to offer 3 free consultations. So if you are interested in, you know, getting a free consultation, please send your CV, your bio, and your why. Yes, Remy, we'll answer your question after this. So please send your CV, your bio, and your why to personalbranding@futuresoft-ng.com. And also another offer that we have today is that if you sign up today, you get a 30% discount on the packages. So this is for the first 5 people who basically sign up to any of the packages that we have. Okay, so there were still 2 questions here. One is from Remy. So she said, what if some of your business is a social impact as opposed to profit making? So I don't think that it really matters whether your business is social impact driven or profit driven. I think that here we're really talking about how do you build your personal brand. And when you look at thought leaders like Okonkwo-Nwuneli, you will really see that she has been able to bridge both worlds, right? She has an impact-driven business and she has profit-making businesses as well, right? She also has positioned herself as an expert on economic development, on agriculture, on, you know, feeding the nation, and so many other topics you know, and by doing that, it's the impact part that has opened up opportunities for her, like sitting on the board of the Rockefeller Foundation, for example. It's not the profit driving part of her business that has really gotten her to that particular position, right? So I think there are many, many ways of using social impact to actually position yourself for really, really big opportunities, you know, beyond anything that has to do with profit making.
I also want to add, in terms of even when you sort of strengthen your personal brand, even as if you run a social impact company, like Nkemdi says, it opens you up to sort of major opportunities and major partnerships. You know, we have a lot of, even from experience, I have a lot of clients who approach us. Maybe they're about to sort of do funding, or they're about to seek a major partnership. And what usually happens is, on the other end of the spectrum, they are Googling you, they're searching you, they're doing their research to make sure, are you a good partner? Are you a valid partner? Is this the business we should be associated with? So it also sort of it enhances your profile, and then it also makes those sort of big opportunities possible, because there is, you know, there's a digital footprint, there's an online and offline footprint about you. So I think that whether you're a social impact business or, you know, you're a for-profit business, it's still very, 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 very important.
Okay, then we have another question from Abiola that says, how often does personal style and image affect branding? And should you use fashion on a page as a tool? For example, finance and fashion, like Medium. Okay, I'm a bit confused about this finance and fashion part, but I'm gonna attempt to answer the first part of the question. So I actually had a conversation this morning with someone that said, you know, there's this lady who, you know, a couple of years back was pretty much a plain Jane, and now she, you know, got some vibes here. So a couple of years back, she was a plain Jane, and now, you know, she sort of positioned herself as a, you know, really made up, you know, always looking glam, always looking amazing person. That do you have to do that in order to have a successful personal brand? You know, and my answer was, no, you don't. There are people who don't have to have stage makeup all the time and really long lashes and perfectly made nails and, you know, a Gucci dress or whatever it is, right? I think some professionals have, especially women, have found a way to tie their stylishness to their brand, but it is a byproduct. It is not what makes your brand. Obviously, I'm not saying go look shabby by any means. That's definitely not something that you should be doing, and which is why we talked about photography and sort of putting your best side forward. But on the other hand, you know, I don't think that you necessarily have to use fashion. You know, I also think that sometimes when we focus, especially when we're at the beginning of our brand building journey, if we focus too much on fashion, or, you know, stuff like, or maybe I always have a cute bag. So, you know, like within my posts that are about, I don't know, technology, suddenly there are bag pictures, right? It may also distract from your messaging, right? It may distract from your personal brand, because people are now like, okay, so she likes bags, but she likes technology. You know, what is she trying to do with the bags? Why does she post the bags? Is she trying to get an endorsement from, you know, a Gucci or something so that, you know, they can give her free bags? Or what exactly is she trying to do with this bag pictures? So that may cause that brand confusion that I talked about. You know, so for me, I think if you're a fashionista, stay a fashionista. If you're not, you don't need to break the bank or break your back in order to, you know, look fashionable. But I would say be consistent, you know, sort of in terms of the sort of like the look that you have, right? So that people can also, so for example, if suddenly you saw me, you know, I don't know, at a conference and I'm not wearing one of my sort of signature dresses, and I'm suddenly wearing like jeans and a founder, like my company t-shirt, you know, and I don't know, I have like flats on and, you know, I just don't look like Nkem normally looks, I think people would be confused. And I remember there was a Google conference that I attended. And I mean, I was wearing like tight pants, I was wearing heels, I was wearing, you know, really nice jewelry, but I was wearing my Futuresoft t-shirt with it. And it's like this really nice tight fitting top. So it's not really a t-shirt. And I was wearing like a little cardigan. And, you know, one of the other tech guys was like, what are you wearing? And I was like, my brand t-shirt. And he's like, yeah, I'm not sure that's a good look. And I'm like, why? He's like, you're really cute in your dresses and we like your dresses. And, you know, that's your signature. Don't try and be like us. He's like, it doesn't fit you. And that was like, he's my friend. So like, obviously you could say that, but that actually made a really sort of like a deep point for me, because it showed me that you don't need to fit in, you know, like that, right? You can wear whatever it is that you want, you know, you don't need to look like a techie to be a techie, right? So I think, you know, and I think that that's something that I always, you know, like the reason why I wear dresses when I speak especially is because I want to look as feminine as possible. I don't want to look like some, you know, boss person in like a pantsuit. No, I want to look really, really feminine, because I want to show the world that a woman can speak on a global stage looking extremely feminine, but talking a lot of sense, right? Those two should not be mutually exclusive. And just because you're in tech, you don't need to look like a nerd or a geek, right? You can look pretty, you can wear your heels, you can wear a nice dress, and you can look like, you know, maybe you are supposed to be, I don't know, you know, Madam President or something. Okay. I don't know, Ijeoma, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you've covered it all.
Okay. Okay, do we have any other questions? Okay, so if there are no other questions, I think we've answered all of them. Okay, there's someone saying hi. Hi, Nani, do you have a question? Yes, sure, go ahead. Just waiting for the question to come in. If anyone else has a question, please ask now. Okay, so there's a question: at what stage in your career should we actually start this process? So I think that there's really no particular, you know, time frame to start it. And she also adds to that, if we don't necessarily have any digital footprint just yet. So I don't think that, you know, just because you don't have a digital footprint, you can't start on the journey. I actually think that you, you know, you can really focus on building that journey, right? And the more strategic and the more intentional you are, the faster you will accelerate that journey, right? And, you know, the last 3 years, I've actually been operating my personal brand on a strategic document, right? And the sort of like the leaps that I have made by doing that are exponential, right? And yes, the foundation that I had helped, right? But the fact that I am now much more intentional, and I am picking opportunities, and I am pitching myself for opportunities, and I am opening myself up for specific things, and I'm very strategic about the networks I join, the content that I publish, the type of connections that I make on LinkedIn, you know, the type of global connections that I make. I ask people, can you introduce me to this person? You know, can you do this for me? Can you do, I'm not shy anymore, right? Before I used to be like, oh, well, you know, I don't want to ask, but now I ask for every, the worst thing that you can do is say no, right? So the more intentional you are, the quicker you will see results, and the quicker you will get to your goals. So my advice would be, if you have goals, right? And if you understand your purpose, or you want to understand that purpose better, you know, then this is the time to really sort of start. Okay, then, okay, Zara said she missed the answer to her question. Okay, so Zara, I was saying that, yes, if you already have a logo and you know, sort of like your brand collateral, then we can take that out. However, that we wouldn't compromise on stuff like, if you say, oh, I don't want the consultation, or I don't want the strategy. So it's not really a sort of like pick and choose list. It's more of this is a holistic package that will get you to a successful point list. Obviously, something like branding can be removed from it because it's not necessarily a strategic tool. But obviously if your branding is really crap and horrible, I know yours is not, but if it's really crap and horrible, we will tell you, and we will, basically recommend for you to redo your branding and really, make sure that it aligns with the goals and the messaging, and the feel and look and how you want to be perceived. So I hope you didn't miss it again. Okay, if you sign up today, do you still pay in 2 installments? Yes, you do. When do you think you'll work on the other packages you mentioned? This is a good question. As soon as possible. So it's in the works. We're discussing it. We're sort of brainstorming it. But I don't have a proper timeline. But just kind of stick to our handles. Follow us so that you can get updates. Follow our companies as well. The updates will be on our company pages as well when we are ready with those packages. What's the submission deadline for the free consultation offer, please? Oh, this is a good question, actually. I would say probably let's Ijeoma, should we give people till Sunday to submit? Yeah, okay, so we have till Sunday to submit. Okay, Tola asked, what should you be projecting with personal brand if you're linked to 2 brands that are both a little known and also linked to a charity, how to balance all 3? Okay, so Tola, I think with you, right, you have, I know the 3 sort of brands that you're talking about. And I think that what from the communication that I've been seeing, iDesign is sort of, the stronger brand at the moment, right? So my advice would be focus on that, right? And you can then always use, that, sort of like, but so let me rewind. So you are an interior designer. You're also into art, right? And you're into charity. I think those are 3 points that can be easily combined, right? I think it's really about telling that brand story. And I don't think that you necessarily need to link yourself to both of your businesses. I think you can link yourself to the business where you really see maybe more potential for future growth, right? Personal growth. And if that is iDesign, right, then I would say, okay, position yourself more as that professional interior designer. We've talked about this a couple of times, do your publications in different newspapers, contributions, use your LinkedIn to amplify the work that you're doing. You did amazing work, with the Ebony Life Place. You did amazing work with Pit Stop, but people don't know about this, right? Yeah, Ijeoma is shaking her head. Did you know that she did those places? No, you see? So telling that story, if you're doing amazing work, especially because your work is visual, so it's so easy to sort of amplify and put out there, I would use that brand, especially if I plan to stay in that line of business for, a long time. You can always mention, your other business, when you're talking, because obviously you designed the interiors of Bogobiri as well. You have your gallery there as well, so you can talk about the love of art that you have, because the art is also something that you bring into your interior design. And I think charity always works, no matter what your core professional focus is, right? Nobody will say, oh, but why is she, into this particular charity? Why not another charity? No, you choose whatever charity you're passionate about, and then you just have to position it. And I think that once you identify those messaging pillars and what the messaging pillars are about, then it's really easy to sort of, say, okay, this is how I communicate that charity work and aspect that I do, and this is how I communicate that professional aspect that I do. So I think that there is a way to balance it. This is also why, we're here to help you with the strategy and help you thinking through what are if you have multiple, sort of businesses, how do you position yourself stronger in one of them? So, I mean, I have that struggle myself, right? I run 2 businesses. I run Futuresoft and I run Always Me. Always Me, you know, I mean, most people think it's my sister's business, you know, and they're like, oh, Nkem is so nice. She always helps her sister at exhibitions. And I'm like, well, okay, yeah, we both own this business, but they can't like sort of bring it together, right? And I mention it as, you know, sort of part of me being a serial entrepreneur and being multifaceted and, you know, sort of my creative outlet. But it is not what you would see at the front burner of my profile, because my profile is geared towards me positioning as an IT professional and not necessarily positioning as a serial entrepreneur in that regard, right? I have a section in my profile that talks about me being a serial entrepreneur. When I get asked about it, I do talk about it, but it's not something that I necessarily, you know, push for the opportunities that I am looking for. So I hope that answers your question. Oh, I muted Ijeoma. I didn't mute you. Okay, wait. I need to go into the participant list. This is the only way I can. Okay, I think you have sound again now.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was doing the thumbs up.
Oh, okay, I was wondering. Okay, let's see. Is there anything else? Is the free consultation in addition to the 30% discount? If you get selected for the free consultation and you also, you know, sign up today, then maybe yes. But as we said, the free consultation is something that we're going to, you know, sort of read all of the different CVs, all of the different profiles, and, you know, pick our favorites. So there are no guarantees that you will, you know, sort of be picked as one of those 3 winners. You know, if that makes sense. Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, so if there are no other questions, I think that we pretty much reached the end of our masterclass. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
us. Thank you for spending all, you know, I think like 2.5 hours with us. The questions were amazing. This also gives us a lot more insight in terms of the questions that we need to answer in our own communication to people who are interested in this service. So thank you for helping. Oh, one more chat. Let's see. Okay, Joyce just says, thank you so much, Nkem and Ijeoma. I'm grateful. You are amazing. You're very, very welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Staying with us. We are grateful that you're here. Reach out to us. The email address is personalbranding@futuresoft-ng.com. You can also send us DMs on Instagram or reach us on our LinkedIns. We're available across all of these different channels. And, you know, let's talk. Let's, you know, position your brands. Let's get you to that next level. You know, let's work together. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.